You wake up early. You do what you're supposed to do. You work hard, stay consistent, try not to waste money on things that don't matter. You even hesitate before buying something small, like your bank account is personally judging you. Very responsible, very adult. And somehow, it still feels like you're falling behind. Not in a dramatic, everything is collapsing kind of way. More like a quiet suspicion that all this effort should be doing more than this. Because if discipline is the answer, you've been pretty disciplined. If hard work is the key, you've been turning it daily. And yet, the result feels strangely underwhelming. Meanwhile, you look around and see people who seem a lot less careful. Doing better? Less planning? Less guilt? More results? Which is a little confusing if the rules are supposed to be fair. So naturally, you try to fix it. Tighten the budget. Push a bit harder. Optimize everything. Because clearly the problem must be you. But then a slightly uncomfortable thought shows up. What if the issue isn't that you're bad with money? What if the issue is that you're playing the wrong game? You're not reckless. You're not pretending money doesn't exist and hoping it magically works out. You try to be responsible, consistently. You check prices before buying things. You compare options. You pause before spending, even on things you actually want. Sometimes you even talk yourself out of it, not because you can't afford it, but because it feels like you shouldn't. That's the pattern. You've been following a formula that sounds very reasonable on paper. Work hard, spend less than you earn, save consistently. No tricks, no shortcuts, just discipline. And to be fair, you do follow it. Maybe not perfectly, but honestly enough that you expect it to lead somewhere. You're not trying to get rich overnight. You're not chasing some unrealistic fantasy. You just want stability, a sense that your effort is building something, that over time things are getting easier, not tighter. But that's not quite what happens. Progress feels slow, almost invisible. Like you're doing all the right things, but the results are stuck in buffering mode. And then life keeps adjusting the difficulty without asking you first. Living costs go up. Things that used to feel affordable now require planning. Opportunities feel just slightly out of reach. So you respond the only way you know how. You become more careful, more controlled, more on top of things. And weirdly, life doesn't expand. It shrinks, not dramatically. Just enough to notice that being responsible doesn't feel like moving forward. It feels like maintaining position. Here's the uncomfortable part. If the rules you've been following were actually working the way they're supposed to, you should be seeing clearer results by now. Not perfection. Not luxury. Just something noticeable. Something that confirms you're moving forward. But instead, what you get is friction. More effort doesn't multiply your results. It just helps you keep up. It's like running on a treadmill that slowly speeds up over time. At first, it feels manageable. Then it requires focus, then effort. And eventually, all your energy goes into staying in the same place. And when that happens, the explanation is always convenient. You need more discipline. So you tighten things again. Cut a little more. Work a little more. Optimize a little more. Because the system can't be wrong, right? So it must be you. But that assumption starts to crack after a while. Because if the input keeps increasing, and the output barely changes, at some point, you have to question the structure itself. What if the issue isn't how hard you're trying, but where that effort is being applied? Because in some systems, effort has limits. It doesn't scale, it doesn't multiply, it just gets absorbed. And if you're inside one of those systems, working harder doesn't solve the problem, it just makes you better at staying stuck. Most people think money works like a single system. It doesn't. It's more like a set of overlapping games, each with its own rules, its own logic, and very different outcomes. And the problem is not that you're failing inside the game you're playing. It's that you were only taught one version of it. There's a game where you trade time for money. That's the one everyone understands. You show up. You work. You get paid. Effort matters. Consistency matters. But there's a ceiling built into it. No matter how efficient you become, your time is still limited. Your energy is still limited. And eventually, improvement becomes incremental. Then there's another game, less visible, less explained. In this one, effort still exists, but it's not the main driver. Positioning matters more. Ownership matters more. Systems matter more. You do something once, and it keeps producing. An investment, a piece of work that scales, a decision that compounds over time. And suddenly the relationship changes. The same unit of effort can create a completely different outcome. But here's the catch. Most people are trained to survive in the first game. Get a job, be reliable, stay consistent. No one really explains how the second game works, or when to start playing it. So you stay where the rules feel familiar. You optimize your budget in a system where rising costs quietly erase your gains. You work longer in a system where your hours are permanently capped. You're doing everything correctly, inside a structure that was never designed to create meaningful acceleration. So the issue isn't that you're bad with money. It's that the rules you're following only make sense in a very narrow context. And outside of that context, they don't move you forward. They just keep you in place. There are 3 ideas you need to see clearly. Not memorize, not admire, just actually see. First, the effort game. This is where most people spend their entire financial life. You give time, you get paid. Simple, predictable, and very easy to understand. It rewards consistency, reliability, and showing up even when you don't feel like it. And to be clear, it works. You can build a stable life here. You can improve your income, get raises, become more efficient, more valuable. But there is a limit built into the structure. Your income is directly tied to your time. And time doesn't scale. You can optimize it, manage it better, maybe stretch it a little, but you cannot multiply it. So the growth tends to be linear. A bit more effort leads to a bit more income. Over time, that adds up, but slowly. And eventually, it plateaus. Not because you failed, because that's how the game is designed. Second, the leverage game. This is where things start to behave differently. In this game, your effort is still required, but it's no longer the main constraint. Instead of trading hours directly, you create something that continues to produce results beyond the moment you worked on it. That could be money invested into assets. It could be a business that runs beyond your direct involvement. It could be a skill that reaches more than one person at a time. The key difference is simple. In the effort game, your input and output are tightly connected. In the leverage game, they start to separate. You can do something once and benefit from it multiple times. And when that happens, the math changes. A small, well-placed action can outperform a large amount of repeated effort. Not immediately, not magically, but structurally. That's why, from the outside, it sometimes looks like people are getting disproportionate results. They're not necessarily working less. They're just working inside a system where effort can multiply. Third, rule awareness. This is the part almost no one talks about. Most people don't consciously choose their game. They inherit it. They grow up learning how to be responsible, how to earn, how to save, how to avoid mistakes. All useful, all necessary, but incomplete. Because no one clearly explains that these rules belong to a specific environment, and that outside of it, different rules apply. So what happens? People try to win by improving inside the effort game, expecting it to eventually produce the results of the leverage game, which is a bit like trying to win a chess match by becoming extremely good at checkers. You can be disciplined, focused, consistent, and still be playing something that doesn't lead where you think it does. So when progress feels slow, the instinct is to double down. More effort, more control, more optimization. Instead of asking a different question, not, how can I do this better? But, is this the right game to be playing at all? And that's where the trap usually closes. Because the better you get at the wrong game, the harder it becomes to leave it. Imagine 2 people. Both are disciplined, both are careful, both genuinely try to make smart decisions. From the outside, they look very similar. Person A stays fully inside the effort game. They get a stable job, show up every day, do what's expected. Over time, they improve. Better position, better salary, more responsibility. They save part of what they earn. avoid unnecessary risks, keep things under control, and it works, to a point. Their income grows gradually. Their life becomes more comfortable. Fewer financial surprises, more stability. But the overall structure doesn't really change. Their time is still the core driver. Their progress still depends on continuous effort. If they stop, the system pauses. Now person B. At the beginning, there's almost no difference. Same type of job, same income range, same level of discipline. But they start making slightly different decisions with their time and money. Not dramatic ones, not reckless ones, just different. Instead of only saving, they start allocating a portion into things that can grow. Slowly, imperfectly, sometimes even awkwardly. Instead of only working, they experiment with building something small on the side, something that doesn't pay immediately, something that feels inefficient at first. And for a while, it actually looks worse. Less free time, more uncertainty, results that don't seem proportional to the effort. From the outside, it might even look like a step backward. But then something subtle begins to shift. A small investment starts compounding. A project starts generating returns beyond the initial effort. A skill begins to reach more people without requiring more hours. Nothing explosive, nothing viral. Just quiet multiplication. And over time, a gap appears. Not because person B worked harder, not because they were smarter, but because they gradually moved into a system where outcomes are not strictly tied to time. Meanwhile, person A keeps improving, inside a structure that doesn't allow that kind of shift. So the difference grows, slow at first, then noticeable, then impossible to ignore. And this is where things get confusing for most people. Because if you only look at effort, both did everything right. But effort only tells part of the story. The rest depends on the rules of the game you're playing. And those rules decide whether your effort compounds or just keeps you in motion. Staying in the wrong game doesn't just affect your money. It quietly reshapes how you think. You start linking effort with value. The more you push, the more you feel you've earned your place. Rest begins to feel suspicious, like something you have to justify. And since results don't scale the way you expect, the default reaction is simple. Push harder, be more disciplined, be more efficient, be more controlled. On paper, that sounds like progress. In reality, it often just tightens the loop. Because when the system has limits, increasing effort doesn't break the ceiling. It just makes you hit it more consistently. Over time, that creates a specific kind of frustration. Not loud, not dramatic, just a persistent sense that something is slightly off, but never clearly wrong enough to force a change. So you adapt. You become the reliable one. The one who has it together. The one who doesn't make mistakes. Useful identities, respectable ones. But inside the wrong structure, they come with a trade-off. They keep you stable. And stability, over a long enough timeline, starts to feel like stagnation, because your decisions begin to orbit around maintaining what you have instead of expanding what's possible. And here's where it gets difficult. The longer you stay in one game, the more invisible the alternatives become. Not because they're hidden, but because your mindset filters them out. You evaluate everything through the same rules, the same assumptions, the same expectations about how effort should behave. So even when opportunities appear, they don't quite register. They seem risky, unclear, not responsible enough. And just like that, the cycle continues. Not because you chose it consciously, but because it became the only version of the game that feels real. So if things feel slow, if your effort doesn't seem to translate into real progress, that doesn't automatically mean you're doing something wrong. It might just mean you're operating inside a game with limited upside. And once you see that, something shifts. The pressure to constantly optimize every detail starts to lose its grip. Not because effort stops mattering, but because you begin to place it more carefully. You don't need to abandon discipline. You don't need to swing to extremes or chase every opportunity. You just need to recognize where effort actually creates movement and where it only maintains position. Because the goal was never to work endlessly. It was to build something that moves with you, or even without you. And that doesn't come from doing more of the same. It comes from placing your time, your energy, and your attention into systems where results can compound. That shift is not loud. There's no clear moment where everything changes overnight. It's subtle, almost invisible at first, but over time, it separates motion from progress. And more importantly, it removes the idea that you're the problem. You were just following rules that don't lead where you thought they would. Change the game. And the same effort starts to mean something very different. If this made something click, then you're already seeing differently. And once you see it, you can't really unsee it. So if this perspective gave you clarity, take a second to like the video and share it with someone who's been stuck in that same loop. And if you want to keep breaking down how these hidden rules actually work, subscribe to the channel. Because the next step isn't doing more. It's understanding the game you're playing.